So that way, if you'd like to see it later again, you're more than welcome to come back and view it. So welcome to Tejano Virtual Events. Thanks so much for coming. Today, we're going to have a really neat presentation for you. We are going to be joined today by Jeremy Perales. He has given us some great workshops in the past as well, so he is here again. He is an assistant professor of kinesiology, and he is going to be talking to us today about health and wellness. So please get comfortable, mute your microphones, and if you have any questions, please place them in the chat box. I'm going to be putting that link in the chat box for you to get Tejano passport points for attending. So, Mr. Perales, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and begin.
All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Jeremy Perales, and today I'll be talking about fitness and health and wellness, and basically, more specifically, what's called a needs analysis. Really quickly, the first thing I want to do is ask you all this simple question, and you guys can put your answer choice in the chat box if you'd like. Okay. So how many times a week do you perform a squat? All right. Okay, and then if you need some help, there's some answer choices there. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna move forward, but how many times a week do you perform a squat? Okay, so there's some interesting answers there. So some people said never, right? Some people said not many. I like the when I go to the bathroom. That one's funny. So in reality, you guys can think about, do you all, I mean, to get to work or to get to a location such as the grocery store or movies or wherever you're going, we get in our vehicles, right? And we actually do perform squats every day. And also in the picture in the background, you see there's a woman performing a squat on her office chair there, I guess like a home office chair, right? So we basically sit down and stand up every day, right? When you guys think about it, when you're gonna get in your vehicle, if you're in a smaller vehicle where you have to drop down into, right, you have to squat down in your car, or if you're sitting down in a chair for lunch, for dinner, breakfast, at your kitchen table, whatever it may be, or even sitting down on your couch to watch a movie or just relax, right? We tend to squat. We do perform a squatting motion every single day, and as one of the answer choices was when we go to the bathroom, right? So that's another thing that happens daily pretty much. So we do perform squats pretty much every single day. We just tend not to think of it as a squat. Okay. So regarding fitness, why is that important? So basically what I was saying right now, I'm going to be talking about what's called a needs analysis and what we can do. So this is something basically a trainer would go over with somebody, but this is something you can actually do for yourself and think about what do you need, what movements do you do daily and things like that. So I'm going to basically be talking about three components, which is movement analysis, which is what do we do in our everyday life, physiological analysis, what systems in the body are being targeted, and injury analysis. How can we reduce the risk of getting injured? Okay, so I have three pictures here. Right, so I don't know if y'all are familiar with going to the gym, or if y'all go to the gym at all. You don't, whether that's at home or whether that's at a location of a gym membership, or if you have no equipment, that's okay. I'm gonna be kind of talking about some stuff you can do. But ultimately, we want to mimic what we do in our everyday life. Okay, so here on the screen, you all could see three pictures, right? There's two of them are very similar, right? Two of them are basically showing it's an animated drawing of a man with weights, right? And one of those pictures on the bottom, it shows the man sitting down and he's basically doing what's called a shoulder press, right, with dumbbells while he's seated, okay? And the top left picture, it shows him, same man, just standing and doing a shoulder press with dumbbells, okay? And then I have a picture which shows a man putting a filing box up on a shelf. Okay, so is that something y'all can answer in the comment section if you can? Do you all tend to do that regularly? at home or maybe in your office, do you tend to put stuff up in a closet or in a cabinet? Or maybe when you go on vacation, loading stuff up on a vehicle, is that something you all do? Okay, and in the library, right? No, I know some librarians here, so maybe reaching up for those books on the higher shelves, right? Or even if you do use a step stool, okay, those are movements. That's something you do every day. Okay, so the reason I put the picture of the gentleman sitting on a bench, when we talk about going to work out, we don't want to necessarily, we want to mimic what we do in our everyday life. So I see a lot of people said yes, right? When they said they can relate to the gentleman, putting a box up, on a shelf. Okay, so when we incorporate movements in our workouts, we want to mimic what we do in our everyday life. So we never are seated. We're never really sitting down and doing that motion where we're raising our hands up, right? We never do that. We're always standing and doing that. Now, if somebody, for example, was in a wheelchair, that's different, right? We want to basically do the movements we're capable of, but in this situation regarding the gentleman stacking boxes, the majority of people said yes. So we actually want to stand up, right? Because we're never seated doing that motion. We're always standing. As you all mentioned, it's whether standing up, putting library books back up on shelves, or standing up, putting boxes in your garage on a higher shelving or whatever it may be. So therefore, when we go work out, we want to mimic that. We want to do the top picture where it shows the gentleman doing the shoulder press with dumbbells standing. We want to do that versus sitting because it mimics what we do in our everyday life. Okay, so I'm going to be moving on. So here, our first part of a needs analysis. So again, you all can conduct this on yourself to see think about what movements you do every day. Okay, so this part of a needs analysis, the movement analysis is basically, again, just looking at what movements do we do in our everyday life and apply those into our workouts or our exercises, whether that's with weights or no weights. Okay. So this is important for athletes, especially for athletes, but also for the general population. So basically everyone else. Okay. So with athletes, they perform specific movements in their sports. Okay. So we want to mimic what they do on the field or on the court in the weight room. That's what we want to do. So we're going to give them specific exercises that are going to help them perform better, but we want to mimic what they do. So for example, you see the basketball players there. You don't really see, I'll give an example here. So like say a bicep curl. Everybody's pretty familiar with the bicep curl. Okay. If you think about basketball players, you never really see them do anything like a bicep curl motion. They never really do that motion, right? They're always jumping, they're always running. Okay, they're squatting, right? They utilize squatting motion. They engage their hips, right? They have hip flexion, hip extension. So in their workouts, we want to mimic that. We don't want to have them do bicep curls because they never really do that in their sport. So it really doesn't transfer over well. Okay, but even the gentleman here, you see the gentleman pushing his son on a bike. Okay, so for general population, right? So you have a lot of people actually get injured doing stuff like this, right? I don't know, maybe y'all have done this. Say you tweak your back or something when you push a kid when you push your, let's say, nephew, niece, grandson, granddaughter, whatever it may be, on their bike or something, and you're like, oh man, you're playing around with them, and then you tweak a muscle. Or also it's happened, say when your car driving, and I don't know if you guys put yes if this happened, you're in a car driving, you turn back to get something from the back. Well, you stop driving, you're stopped, but you turn back to get something from the back seat, or maybe stop your kids from fighting, and then you're like, oh, right, and you tweak your back. Okay, so those things happen all the time. Okay, so with this example, with the father pushing his son on the bike, if y'all look at the picture, he's actually basically performing a squat. Okay, so he is performing a squat and he's squatting down. Okay, so we want to mimic squats in everybody's workout. It doesn't have to be heavy weights, right? But we want to mimic, basically everybody should be doing squats because that's something we all do in our daily life, right? We all get up and sit down. We're sitting down in chairs all the time for work, or we're standing up all the time. We sit down and stand up all the time, every single day. Okay, so we want to mimic that because as we age, we lose hip mobility. So we lose that ability as we age. So the more we do it and the more we incorporate it, we want to get moving. That's the main thing, is getting moving, but how we move is really important. So we want to basically perform squatting exercises or movements that incorporate the flexion and extension of the hip, so we don't lose that, or we're gonna lose it gradually, but we can prevent how much we lose it, right? So for example, you see the picture of the older couple here going up the stairs. Okay, so there, with each, I don't know if y'all maybe had experienced this, or if you had maybe a grandparent or so, things become dangerous, right? For example, like small dogs, right, can become dangerous, or a rug, right? If the rug is like 2 inches or so, it becomes a hazard, right? Tripping hazard for an older adult, okay, that may lack mobility. Okay, when we work out and we're incorporating our daily, again, we don't want to necessarily do machines. There's nothing wrong with machines, but machines don't reflect what you do in your everyday life. Machines isolate, and we never live in isolation. We're always utilizing our whole body when we're getting up, in the morning, standing up, getting ready for work, walking to work, right, getting in our cars, out of our cars. Okay, we're always utilizing our whole body. We never isolate anything. So we don't want to really isolate stuff in our workouts. So when we exercise, we want to utilize free weights, so not machines, utilize free weight or body weight, right? Machines are more, if we, for rehab, we can utilize machines and they're perfectly fine, but we want to focus on utilizing our body weight and free weight. So we're basically doing similar movements that we do in our everyday life, because again, we don't do anything in isolation. And if you see that picture of the older couple, right, if we continuously work out, and again, whatever age we're at, it's not too late, right? We can start working out at any age, and the better mobility we have, then the less likelihood, the less risk or less likely we're going to have an injury due to tripping over, let's say, a 2-inch rug, or tripping over like a little dog, right, like a Chihuahua or something that may get in your way. And we also want to be independent as much as we can, right? So we want to have the best quality of life as we age. So if we're working out, we're moving, then we're going to be able to go up these stairs, not saying with no issue, but we're going to be more mobile and maybe get up the stairs without assistance, okay? Versus needing assistance. And now they have devices. I don't know if you all have seen the commercials where they have that cool chair and you it like rides you up the stairs, okay? That'd be kind of cool, but you want to get that just to have fun with your friends and not really need it, right? So, but basically, we want to mimic movements we do in our everyday life, okay? And we never do anything in isolation. Okay, so here we have a second part, what's called a physiological analysis. And I'm just going to touch briefly on this. I won't go too much into the science of it, but we have what are called components. And y'all have heard this before probably. Things such as strength, muscular endurance, power, agility. Okay, so we all have these. It's just we all have varying degrees of them. Okay, so athletes, for example, are going to have higher degrees of agility and speed because they need that. Okay, the general population has it, but they don't need it as much as athletes. And how we exercise or how we train is going to influence these things. Okay, so we all should have a good amount of strength, muscular endurance, cardiovascular endurance, okay, flexibility, and those kind of things. And we can improve them based off how we work out. Okay, so we have to have a training goal. Like, what is our goal for working out? Is our goal, again, we could say to lose weight, that could be a goal, but how do we go about losing weight? Okay, and this is where working with a trainer or a strength and conditioning coach would come into place to help them basically narrow that goal down, right? So some people might say, hey, I want to lose weight. That's my goal. Well, what route do you want to take, right? We can go various ways on losing weight. We can have you do what's called HIIT, high intensity interval training, or cardiovascular exercise, but we can also do heavy resistance training and obviously change up diet and things like that. Okay, it just depends on what the goal is of the person. Do you want to, for example, maintain muscle mass or gain more muscle mass and lose body fat? That's one way. Or we can lose body fat and muscle at the same time. And that's another way to lose weight. Okay, because weight, if we're just saying lose weight, we want to help somebody understand weight isn't necessarily the issue. What's the issue is how much that weight is muscle and how much is fat. Okay, so there's different ways to train that will basically influence those components. Okay, so here's just some diagrams kind of showing. There you see on the top diagram, it says training goal on the y-axis, and it says repetition maximum continuum on the x. It basically tells you what the training goal is based off. You see the numbers that says like 2 or less, all the way to about 20 or more. Okay. That's basically how many repetitions you're doing. Okay, so here it's basically saying strength and power. Wherever it's like highlighted yellow and bold, that's when you're focusing on that component specifically. Okay, so it's basically saying 6 reps or less is focusing primarily on strength and power. And as the reps increase, you still get strength benefit and power benefit, but you're not getting as much. Okay, and then hypertrophy, it basically says from 6 to 12 reps, and then muscular endurance from like 12 all the way to 20. Okay, so again, it just depends what we want to train. If we want to get stronger, do we want to get more faster? Do we want to get have more endurance? Okay, those are things we want to look at and figure out how to train that way. And usually a strength coach or a personal trainer can help us do that. Okay. And with this, right, that doesn't mean, for example, like I said, it says strength, it says 6 reps or less. That's where it's really yellow and highlighted yellow and it's bold. For example, I have a cell phone right here in my hand. Okay, here's my cell phone. I can do 6 reps of my cell phone, right? 6 bicep curls with my cell phone. And did I train strength? No, right? So the amount of repetitions, if I want to target strength, is going to be dependent on the weight. Okay, so for some people, let's just say a barbell. A barbell is what you see in the gym. It's the bar. Okay, a barbell might be heavy for one person. It might be extremely light for another person. Okay, so 6 reps is, whether we're training strength or power, whatever it may be, the reps are going to be dependent on the intensity. And the intensity is the weight, right? How much weight are you lifting? Okay. So I'm going to go move on here a little bit. Okay, so here we have our third component, what's called the injury analysis. Okay, so here, knowing our goals are important. Can also, this is where understanding how the body works is very important. Okay, so for example, if you all are looking for a trainer or a gym, again, more specifically a trainer, you want to ask questions. It's always good to ask a lot of questions. Okay, so nobody should ever get offended by asking questions. They should encourage a lot of questions to be asked, because I don't want to just have somebody come. If I tell somebody to do a workout, I want to explain, hey, this is working this out. This is what the goal is. This is what's happening to your body as you're doing this exercise physiologically, right? So they have a better understanding of what they're doing and why they're doing it, versus me just telling them, hey, you do this and don't ask questions. Okay, so we want to encourage a lot of questions. Here in the picture, obviously you can see she looks that girl looks like she's going to get injured. Okay, she doesn't look like she's doing too good. Okay, so a lot of times we get injuries because primarily inaccurate exercise, inaccurate training. Okay, but also inaccurate, you could say inaccurate coaching. Okay, and how do we know if it's inaccurate coaching? Well, we can look at what are they asking us. Okay, are they telling us to do 20 reps of a lot of weight? Okay, so here in the picture, I'm assuming this girl is doing what's called a power clean. And so that's a powerlifting exercise. And usually you'll see this in, so again, you have good and bad everywhere. You have good and bad in all at the universities, high schools, in every gym. Okay, you have good and bad. I'm going to assume this one, for example, is probably a CrossFit gym. Okay, and usually with that kind of workout, you'll see what's called as many rounds as possible, where they'll tell somebody to do basically 8 minutes, right? They'll have them go and do like different exercises nonstop. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with that, but it just depends on how we structure it. If I incorporate this kind of lift, which this girl's doing in that kind of workout where they're not resting, then I'm going to increase the risk of injury. Okay, I'm going to increase the risk of getting injured, and they're really not targeting what they want to target. Okay, so if I'm having them, say if their goal was they wanted to get stronger, or they want to be they want to improve their power, so they want to improve their explosiveness, but I have them do lifting nonstop and they're not getting rest, and they're going through all these different exercises, they're going to be training cardiovascular, right? They're going to improve their cardiovascular system and their cardiovascular benefit versus what they want. Okay, an example of this would be like Usain Bolt. I'm pretty sure everybody knows who Usain Bolt is. Okay, he's like the fastest man alive. He's a sprinter, right? Everyone sees him for he's runs for, was it Brazil? No, I forget. Brazil? I don't know. But he's really fast, right? So for Usain Bolt, he's what you would call a power athlete. So his training is very explosive, very heavy, and very short. Okay, he's not going to do stuff for 20 minutes. He's not going to go for a 20-minute run. He's not going to do a lot of HIIT, which is high intensity interval training. He's not going to do CrossFit. Okay. He wouldn't do those. If he does, it might be once every now and again, but he's not going to do those consistently, because if he did, then his speed would start getting slower. He'd start getting slower because he's focusing too much on cardiovascular and not enough on power. Okay, so again, that previous slide I was talking about components, we want to know what we're trying to target. Okay, if somebody doesn't really like Usain Bolt, he's a sprinter, he's an athlete, so he wants to be the most explosive person. You might have heard a saying called the jack of all trades, but the master of none. Okay, so that's pretty much what regular people might want, where they're pretty decent in everything, but they won't be the master of anything, right? So Usain Bolt, he's going to be the master of speed and power, because that's what he needs to be successful in his sport. But he doesn't care about his cardiovascular endurance. You know, health-wise, it's important, but he's not going to, care about running a marathon, because that's not what he wants to do. That's not his goal. Okay, for everybody else, we're probably wanting to have a good amount of muscular endurance, muscular strength, power, speed, and everything, right? So we want to kind of have everything, because our main goal is just health versus performance. Okay, you can even think about like sumo wrestlers, right? Sumo wrestlers, all they care about, they want to be successful in their sport. So that might be at the expense of their health. Okay, so they might, for example, have very bad cardiovascular health, but they don't really care, because they want to be successful. So they want in their sport, which requires them to be big and requires them to be powerful and explosive, right? So they don't care about all the other stuff. Okay, so but as general population, we do. All right, but again, we want to ask those questions. If we do have personal trainers, ask them questions, and it's perfectly fine to ask what is your certification. And because again, if you're paying money for somebody and they're charging you, let's just say $200 a month or whatever it is, then you want to make sure they're worth the money, right? And they shouldn't take offense to that, because as any professional in any field, you want to be the best you can and help your clients as best as you can. That means, hey, if I need to get a nurse certification or further my education, then I'm going to do that, right? To be the best, best instructor, best trainer I can for my clients. Okay. But anyway, we want to make sure for our injury analysis, again, this is going to be a little more scientific, so I'm going to try and make it very simple as possible. But we have basically certain systems in our body. Okay, so we have to follow those systems. We have what's called our phosphagen, glycolytic, and aerobic systems. And basically those systems determine how we utilize energy, or ATP, right? So we can't cheat those. Okay, so we want to know, well, if we're doing something where it's like this, like the picture showing, if it's like doing as many rounds as possible with heavy weights and explosive movements, then that's not a good equation for being safe, right? We're going to probably increase our risk of injury, but there's benefit, right? There's still benefit, for example, for this kind of workout. Like I mentioned, this person doing this is probably going to get cardiovascular benefit. Okay, so they're going to get cardiovascular benefit, but they're really increasing the risk of injury. Okay, so we want to look at it, for example, as why are we doing it? How many reps? Why am I doing this many reps? Why am I doing this exercise? For how long? Why am I resting this long, or why am I not resting longer? Okay, those are questions we want to ask, because all that's very important regarding our systems in the body. Okay, how much we rest is going to influence that. Okay, so when we talk about exercise selection, so if you all go to the gym or if you all work out at home, okay, so even just walking is good. Anything just moving, okay, but this is more specific. Like if you go to the gym, what kind of exercises do you do? Okay, do you do core exercises, assistant exercises? And if the goal is to, for example, lose weight, okay, so losing weight, the easiest equation we can say is we want to reduce our caloric intake, right? Increase caloric expenditure and decrease caloric intake. So expend more and intake less, right? So when we're talking about exercise, some exercises obviously expend more energy, okay? So to expend more energy, we want to incorporate more muscle groups, all right? So when we talk about exercise type, we have core exercises and we have assistant exercises. Okay, core exercises, as it's showing there, they're what are called multi-joint exercises. Okay, so, and that's what I was kind of talking about earlier. We don't live in isolation. We don't do anything in isolation. We don't, that's why I was encouraging when we go work out, we want to utilize free weights or What I mean by that is not machines, not things that help us, unless, obviously it's okay to use them, but we want to focus on um, moving how we do in everyday life. We move freely, right? We do functional exercises, meaning they're free movement. Okay, so core exercises would be an example of that. So like this picture to the right, you see there's a woman doing lunges. Okay, that is more practical, and that's going to basically spend more energy. That's going to require more energy than something like an assistant exercise where we're basically isolating a muscle group. Okay, so assistant exercises are single joint exercises, or a lot of assistant exercises are done on machines. Okay, so when you go to the gym, you see a bunch of machines. Those would be isolating a muscle group, right? It wants to focus on one muscle group, so it's isolating it, right? But the difference is if the goal is to lose weight, and again, this is just information. You could still lose weight by doing machines, but you want to know that doing free weight or doing core exercises involving your whole body is going to expend more energy. Okay, so there, and then if you're expending more energy, then you could probably, eat more, enjoy, life a little more with like tacos and stuff like that. Okay, versus if I go to the gym and all I do is nothing but machines, I'm not really burning as much as I think I am. Okay, because if I engage more musculature, then I'm going to burn more energy. The less musculature I engage, the less energy I'm burning. Okay. And we want to keep a movement specific or sport specific for athletes. Okay, we want to create muscular balance and also exercise technique experience. So what I mean by exercise technique experience, for example, some gyms, okay, I'm going to go back to the previous slide real quick. Some gyms, I don't know if y'all have ever visited one or been to one. You might be doing this movement. If you see this woman, she's doing what's called, I'm assuming she's doing a power clean. Okay, and right there, she's actually looks like she's going to get injured. She's putting a lot of stress on her lower back and her knee. Her knee's kind of going in. But anyway, with this kind of gym, sometimes you'll have people who have no experience doing this type of movement, and they're doing it within their first or second week at the gym. Okay, and they may feel safe, right? For example, if I took a questionnaire and went to a certain gym and asked everybody, "Do you feel safe?" Everyone's going to say yes. And again, but does that mean they're safe? Not necessarily, right? It just again, they're going to think they're safe because their trainer looks fit, looks like they exercise, and they say some fancy words. So it seems like they know what they're talking about, right? So of course, I would check mark, yes, I feel safe, right? But if I don't know anything about that field, then I'm going to assume I'm safe, right? But in reality, that's why we want to ask questions and see what's required to get a certification or certain things because we don't want to get injured. Okay. But again, we want to, what was I saying here? Oh yeah, exercise techniques. So here, again, you might, if you go to a certain gym, I visited a gym before, right? And basically, I'm used to doing this movement, but when I went, people were doing this movement. It was basically their second week at the gym. Okay. So this can be dangerous if you don't have technique, right? Technique's really important, especially if somebody's asking you to do what's called a power clean. Okay, that can be very dangerous if you don't have the flexibility or range of motion for it. Okay, those exercises do require a certain degree of flexibility and range of motion. And you even have what's called preparatory exercises. Okay, so I don't know if y'all are familiar with what's called a front squat. A front squat is basically kind of like what this lady's doing, but you'd have her elbows would be parallel with the ground, and basically she would be squatting down with the weight basically on her anterior part of the shoulders, right? And she would squat down, and the bar would be in the front, and then she would squat back up. Okay, a lot of people lack the flexibility to do that. So if they don't have the flexibility to do a front squat, then I shouldn't really ask them to do a power clean. I would really want to work with them and improve their flexibility first, and then progress gradually instead of just having them jump straight to the hard stuff. Okay. So that's why exercise technique is really important, because if we don't have the technique, it can lead to injuries. Okay, or obviously we're not going to get we're going to get benefit, right? I'll give you an example of this too, right? With sprinting. Okay, so like Usain Bolt. Y'all can see my camera, yes? Are y'all able to?
See you, Jeremy.
Awesome. Okay. So with Usain Bolt, if y'all ever seen sprinters or just sprinters in the Olympics, okay, if you look at them sprints, they're very specific on how they run. Technique's really important for performance. Okay, so let's just say Usain Bolt, you see his arms and everything, they're very like this, they run very, perfect. Now let's just say if I ran out on the track with Usain Bolt and I was running like this, right, with my arms flailing everywhere. Okay, do I still get fitness benefit from that? What do y'all think? You can put yes or no in the comment. Yes. Y'all are right. I still do get fitness benefit because I'm still moving. Okay. I still get fitness benefit because even though I'm running with my arms flailing everywhere, I'm still moving. Okay. So I still get benefit, but it's not going to be good for performance, right? I'm not going to ever be a good sprinter if I run like that. Okay. So, but in regards to some things, technique is very important because it can lead to injuries, right? So in that scenario I gave you guys, like that's good, regarding performance. Like I can run with my arms flailing all day long. I'll still get fitness benefit, but I'm not going to ever be a good sprinter because that requires technique. Okay, so with lifting requires good technique, right? Because if the technique is off, well, then I'm going to increase my risk of injury. Okay, so we want to make sure we're learning properly. And training status. So training frequency. So that's basically how often do you exercise? How often do you go to the gym, right? So training status is how experienced is the individual. Obviously, if the person is more trained or if they're more experienced, then they can work out more often. Okay. Training load and exercise type. Training load is referring to the weight. How much weight are you moving? Exercise type. We have different types, right? Whether I'm training for strength, power, muscular endurance, cardiovascular endurance. We can do a lot of different types of or modalities of training. Okay, it just depends on what our goal is. And that's also going to depend on our fitness level. Okay, so I don't know if you all have seen, like, for example, we have very popular things, for example, are high intensity interval training, and CrossFit's very popular too. Okay, those are very high intense. Okay, so if somebody just started working out, then we'd want to do a modified version of HIIT, but we wouldn't really have them do HIIT or CrossFit because those are very high intense and they can be very dangerous, right? If the person is not at a certain fitness level, okay? And it could actually discourage them from going back, right? So if you've ever visited a gym, I don't know, maybe you guys went with a friend one time and you go and man, like these guys are crazy, right? I don't want to come back. Okay, so that happens. Okay, so obviously we want to take into account the person's, how often they work out, and a trainer would really ask them to do what's called a PAR-Q, right? Basically a physical activity readiness questionnaire. Okay, see if they're physically ready and also go through their medical history and things like that to make sure. For example, if I have a client and they have a seizure while they're working out, I can understand, oh, they have this condition or so, right? So I can properly address it. So they would ask a lot of questions before actually, to cover themselves legally. Okay. But anyway, here's some guidelines from the American College of Sports Medicine. So if you're barely working out or barely starting to, if you work out 2 to 3 times a week, that'd be considered beginner, right? 3 to 4 intermediate, and 4 to 7 advanced. Okay. And we want to make sure we switch it up. Okay. So for example, I don't want to be doing, for me, I like doing heavy lifting every now and again, but I'm not going to do that every single day. Okay. Because say for example, I don't know if y'all are familiar with deadlifts, but if I was doing heavy deadlifting every single day, well, too much of a good thing can be bad too, right? So like if we eat a lot of veggies and vegetables, that's still energy, right? If we're not exercising, all we do is eat veggies, but do no exercise. And I like eating a lot. So if I kept eating a whole bunch of veggies, I'm still going to gain weight, right? Because I'm still intaking energy and I'm not expending it. So I'm still going to gain weight. So that's too much of a good thing can be bad, right? So even for example, what was again? Oh, exercise, right? Too much exercise can be bad. That can lead to overtraining or overtraining injuries. Okay. All right, and then here we want to consider exercise order. So I don't know if you all are familiar with certain types of exercises, but you could think of sprinting even, or whatever's most intense, right? Whatever's going to require the most out of you, that's what you want to do first. Okay, so here's some examples. Okay, it says number 1, number 2, and number 3. Okay, so, and also let's add running in there. Okay, we wouldn't want to, and again, as I mentioned before, there's understanding the systems within the body really help. So and again, but if you have a trainer, they should explain that, asking those questions. You can ask those questions like, why am I doing this? But we want to go in the order of our systems. An easy way of thinking about it is if you think it's going to be the ones that are more difficult or more challenging, those are going to require more energy. So we want to do those first. Okay, I don't want to do something very, like for example, do a whole bunch of little stuff first. Like an example would be here, like say number 3. He has a dumbbell, right? He's doing bicep curls. I don't want to go do a whole bunch of machines first and doing bicep curls and isolating all the muscle groups, and then go and do something like a back squat with weight, like number 2, where it shows number 2, because then I'm just increasing my risk of injury, right? I'm basically pre-exhausting the muscle. Okay, so I'm going to do all this stuff, and then I'm going to ask the muscle, hey, be fresh again, and then do the heavy stuff, right? We want to do the heavy stuff or the more intense stuff first because we're fresh, right? We're fresh. We want to take care of that stuff first, and then do the less intense stuff, right? Because if we do the more intense stuff first, if we do the more intense stuff first, that's better, and then do the less intense stuff after, less likely to get injured. But if we do all the less intense stuff first and then go do the more intense stuff, we're asking our body basically to do a lot after it's already done stuff. So we're going to increase our risk of injury. Okay. So when we're talking about how would we order our exercises, we want to do more intense first, going down to the least intense. Okay. So in this example on the PowerPoint, power exercises. So I don't know if y'all are familiar with these kind of exercises or you are. We have like snatches, hang cleans, power cleans. Those are very high intense exercises. Okay. In that picture where the woman was like struggling, that was one of the exercises. Okay. But in that picture, I'm assuming they were doing rounds and rounds of them. We don't want to do that exercise for rounds and rounds. We want to rest. Okay. Versus something like here in the image where you see the Olympic weightlifter, it says number 1. Okay, they never do rounds and rounds of it. It's very quick, fast, and explosive. You guys ever watch the Olympics when they do the weightlifting? They're never doing nonstop rounds of it. They do one lift, done, right? These lifts are supposed to be very explosive and for little reps and a lot of rest. Okay, we would do that kind of stuff first because it's the most intense, and then move on to something that's not as intense, like number 2. Number 2 is not as intense, but it's still pretty intense. And then the least intense are assistant exercises. So things like single joint, the machines, bicep curls, things that just use one joint, that we would do those things at the end. Okay. Almost done here. Training load and repetition. So basically how many repetitions you can do is going to be dependent on the load. Okay. And here on this chart, y'all can see it says number of repetitions allowed, % 1 RM. Okay, so if our goal is strength, we actually have to do a test, right? Much like when we measure students' capabilities in the classroom, right? How well did they retain information? Well, if I go to the gym, whether that's lifting or running, if I do something, I can't really see I'm getting stronger unless I do a test, right? I actually have to test to find out how strong I am or how fast I am or how much muscular endurance I have, right? We have to actually do a test to find out where we're at and then get into a program and then test again. Okay, so that's what this is basically saying, but we actually have to do a test to find out what we can do, if that makes sense. If we just go to the gym and start working out, doing things, that's good, but again, we won't know if we're actually improving to a certain extent because we didn't know what we were capable of doing in the first place. So we have to do tests. All right, then here, basically is what's called volume. Okay, so if you can look at the picture here, right, it just basically says you see the phase, it says strength, hypertrophy, endurance, and then it says sets, reps, intensity, and volume. Okay, so intensity, so basically intensity and volume, as one goes up, the other one goes down. So if our main goal is to get stronger, and this is an easy analogy, lift things up, put them down, right? So if our main goal is to get stronger, we're going to do more weight, meaning the intensity is higher, but the volume's less. So there's going to be less reps, right? So and that's what we see here. Okay, for strength, you see that the intensity is higher, right? Intensity is high. And then if you look at the reps and sets, they're a lot lower, okay, versus the hypertrophy and endurance. So as we move to hypertrophy and endurance, if our goal is to have muscular endurance, for example, being able to continually contract the muscle for longer, then we want to increase the volume and decrease the intensity. Because if both of these things, if they were to go up together, if intensity and volume increased together, well, that's just going to really increase our risk of getting injured. And here, rest periods. So if our goal again is, depends on our goal. If our goal is strength or power, those are going to require more rest, right? Because they're going to be very demanding. They're going to require the most out of you. So obviously we want to rest longer. Okay, we want to rest ideally here it's saying 2 to 5 minutes, but ideally we have what's called foster creatine within our muscle, and that usually takes about 5 to 7 minutes to actually replenish. Okay, so I mean, if we're starting out, best be on the end of the five, right? Rest 5 minutes. More experienced people can rest like 3 minutes and 2 minutes. Okay, ideally 3 to 5 minutes, but here it's saying 2 to 5. Okay, but that depends on the person's actual their level of fitness as well. Okay, and then muscular endurance, you'll notice that the rest time is less. So as I mentioned earlier, I have my cell phone here. So if I was focusing on strength, oh yes, sorry. So if I was focusing on strength, I would need a lot more weight. Okay, so this is very light. So, but again, if you go with a strength coach or a personal trainer, they'll test you on whatever it is you want to do. That way, they can find out what you're capable of doing and prescribe you an adequate amount of weight. Okay, so for me, obviously, I'm just using this as an example. A cell phone is very light. You can do 100 plus reps with it, and it's not really it's not going to be sufficient enough, even for muscular endurance. We need something heavier. Okay. So again, but that would be something you can talk to with a personal trainer or strength coach, or if y'all have questions, y'all can always reach out to the kinesiology department and we'll be happy to help. Okay, and then here, assessment and prescription, these two figures were already presented in previous slides, but basically frequency, intensity, time, and type, or what's called the FIT formula. We want to consider that when we're starting to work out, okay? And we want to be careful not to overtrain, because a lot of times what happens, I've had this with myself. Uh, I used to weigh 326 pounds at one point when I was in high school, and I lost about 110 pounds in 2 months. I didn't do it the best way, right? I actually did it in a bad way. But at the time I didn't know what I know now. I didn't have kinesiology and all that yet. So, but we want to utilize this, okay? Because it can be very dangerous. For me, for example, when I lost weight, I was really encouraged because I'm like, oh yes, I'm seeing results, I'm losing weight. But then I was like, I have to go to the gym, and then I would get overtraining injuries, right? I would get an injury from not resting. Okay, so it's good to lose weight and it's good to reach our fitness goals, but we want to keep, again, too much of a good thing can be bad. We want to keep our health in perspective. So we want to apply the FIT formula. How often are we going? How intense are we working out? Meaning, if we're going heavy all the time, we're likely to increase our risk of getting injured. We want to, again, have moderation with these: frequency, intensity, time, and type. So if we're doing very high intensity workouts, we want to reduce the frequency, but increase the time, right? Meaning increase rest time and things like that. But don't do it, 5 days a week. Reduce the frequency if you're going to go very intense. If the intensity is really low, then maybe we can increase the frequency. Okay. All right, and here I just provided this. This is some extra information for y'all. These are some certifications. For example, if you were looking for a trainer, or if you're interested in going to a gym, or things like that, you can look up these two organizations. These two organizations are pretty much the ones that are leading. They're you could say prestigious organizations in the fitness industry. So they're the National Strength Conditioning Association and the American College of Sports Medicine, and both of them have certifications. Okay, so if you went to a local gym, right, you can ask them what are the certifications are. These are two that I recommend. They're because again they do a lot of publications, a lot of research, and they're a lot of, if you're going kinesiology route, right, a lot of them have to be in part of these organizations. But the Strength Conditioning Association has what's called the Strength Conditioning Coach, and they have what's called the CSCS. So if you yourself, or let's say if you have a nephew, a son, daughter who wants to be an athlete, okay, and we have local gyms in El Paso that require this now. Before we didn't really have many, now we do. There's Connective on the west side, Human Performance Center, HPC, Orange Theory. There's a lot more now than there used to be. But the gym, those trainers have to have their CSCS, which is what's called the Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist. So with that, they have to have a bachelor's degree, and they can train collegiate athletes, professional athletes, right? So when you think of every professional team you like, maybe you guys like the Super Bowl, okay, like the Bengals and the Rams, right? They have coaches that have their CSCS. So those are the ones, like if you're specifically wanting to work with be an athlete. So if you have kids or nephews that want to do that, a lot of high school kids want to do that, so they'll put them with a strength coach that has that certification because they can work at those levels. Okay, and then you have a TSAC, which is a tactical strength and conditioning coach for military, police, fire department, and then also a certified strength and special populations. That last one is for special populations. For example, if somebody has, you wouldn't think of it, but I didn't even realize this, but if somebody has cancer or a certain illness, they actually have personal trainers for that if they have certain conditions, or if they've lost a limb. If somebody's lost a limb or things like that, that would be under a CSPS for special populations, right? It's a trainer that works with specifically with special populations, and they have to have their bachelor's degree as well. Okay, so they're going to be more expensive versus somebody like a personal trainer. So if you all went and just wanted to work on, staying fit, staying healthy, going to a personal trainer is perfectly fine. Again, it just depends what your goal is. And personal trainers these don't require a bachelor's. They just require the high school diploma and CPR, right? First aid. And these are the NSCA certified personal trainer, ACSM certified personal trainer, and ACSM group. It's a group trainer where they work with groups. Okay. And again, if the main thing is to just get moving, right? To be moving, but to do it safely, right? And where do we get our information from? Again, nowadays people are looking at like TikTok and stuff like that, and you have a lot of stuff on, social media. A lot of that can be wrong, a lot of it can be right? But again, how do we know if it's wrong or right? We want to consult somebody. Okay, so for me, I don't know anything about baking. I like to, well, not baking, cooking, but I want to go ask a chef how to cook. I don't know how it works, but not necessarily, probably not a baker, right? Bakers bake, chefs cook. So there's like an umbrella. We want to seek out and ask questions in professionals in those fields, right? So TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, those are good things, right? People are on those and they're giving accurate information, but again, how do we know it's accurate or not? Okay, so main thing is we want to be safe and be moving, and especially with COVID and everything now, right? We want to stay healthy, because just in general, right? We want to stay healthy. We want to improve our quality of life as we age and stay healthy and free from illnesses and diseases. Okay, and fitness plays a huge part in a lot of that. If we're healthy, we're reducing our risk of a lot of illnesses and a lot of obesity related diseases, and also development of type 2 diabetes and all those kind of things, which are pretty, high in El Paso, right? We want to be as healthy as we can and protect ourselves and be here for our loved ones and be independent as we age as best we can. Okay, so with that being said, that concludes my presentation. If you all have any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, but thank you all for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. That's great. Great information. Thank you so much. So does anybody have questions? So again, thank you to everyone for coming. Thank you so much for a great presentation. That was a lot of good information, and also it's nice to see how it applies to what you do at work as well. So thank you so much. And thank you all for coming. I want to hope you're enjoying our Tejano virtual event workshop series. Next week, we are going to have another great workshop. We're going to have Blake Clamasara. He's going to be talking about the libraries. So we'll be able to hear about all the great services and resources there. Don't forget, I put the link for the Tejano Passport points in the chat. So if you participate in that, you can get a medallion. So try it out. Go to their website, the Tejano Passport program. And go ahead, and I hope you all have a great weekend, and I hope you all stay safe. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.